Hello everyone! In my previous videos we talked about all the amazing digital circus characters from Glitch Productions that are controlled by humans. How does this happen and what are these characters? I've talked about that in detail in my reviews. If anyone has not watched them, be sure to check them out. You'll find out a lot of new and surprising things about these characters and Amazing Digital Circus. I will leave the links to the reviews of Digital Circus characters in the description. And today I want to tell you about NPCs. You will know how they differ from the Digital Circus characters and why they are needed. Click subscribe to my channel. Sit back, and here we go. And we'll start with a question. What is an NPC? Perhaps someone doesn't quite understand how NPCs differ from the characters of the Digital Circus, so I will briefly tell you about it. NPCs are non-player characters. They appeared in role-playing games. These are the characters of the game which are controlled by the computer according to the characteristics and algorithms set in the game. So in a computer game, there are characters that are controlled by a person or several people if it is a network multiplayer game, and there may be characters that are not controlled by players. I think that's pretty clear. But what are NPCs for? The simplest role of NPCs in the game is to create the overall game atmosphere. Such characters do not affect the gameplay in any way. They do their own things and do not even notice the players. In some games, players can't influence such NPC characters, but it's not interesting at all. In other games, players can influence NPC characters. For example, push him and he will fall. Are there such NPCs in the Digital Circus? Yeah, sure. Remember the little episode when Kane and Bubble were sitting in the cafe and around them sat strange creatures that looked like wooden mannequins? We also saw one of these people sitting in the bathtub when POMNI was opening various doors and opened this one. We saw similar little people in the second episode of Candy Carrier Chaos. These are the inhabitants of the Candy Kingdom. They just waved and greeted the Digital Circus characters as they entered the castle. Maybe you noticed one episode when one little man ripped off the head of another one out of joy. I don't know why. Perhaps the authors thought it was funny. At the end of the adventure in the Candy Kingdom, we also see these little men. Sun, Moon, and Gummy Elephant can also be referred to these NPCs. Another category of NPCs are auxiliary characters. They can communicate and interact with players in some other way. They can give advice or hints to players. On the contrary, they can create obstacles to achieve the goal or play the role of opponents or enemies. But all of them act only according to the programmed scenarios. In the Digital Circus, we can meet such NPCs as well. A typical category of such NPCs is gloinks. Remember how they grabbed different items and dragged them to their hole? Also, the gloinks took apart Zooble and dragged her piece by piece to their hole as well. I think the Gloink Queen could be called such an NPC as well. She stays in one place in her burrow and doesn't move anywhere. She threatened to swallow JAX, Kinger, and GANGLE, but didn't. This means that her job was only to scare the participants of the adventure, and she succeeded. Kinger and GANGLE were really scared of the Gloink Queen. Another role of the Gloink Queen is to interact with the characters in the Digital Circus through talking. This is exactly what JAX wanted to do, but their talk was interrupted by an abstracted KAUFMO who fell down a hole and fell on the Gloink Queen. The Gloinks were part of Kane's adventure, and so they disappeared after completing the passage of the adventure. In the second episode, Candy Carrier Chaos, we also saw NPCs like this. They are Princess Lulalalu, the Fudge, and the two crocodiles, Max and Chad. Princess Lulalalu differs from the Candy Kingdom humans, in that she has a name, a distinctive appearance. She does look like a princess. After all, she interacts with the Digital Circus characters that are involved in this Kane adventure. And she also gave Ragatha the key to the gates of the Candy Kingdom. We didn't see any other interactions with the Digital Circus characters. We see that Princess Lulalalu is a supporting character. The Fudge is a bit like the Gloink Queen in her role. She appears in her location and threatens the characters JAX, RAGATHA, Kinger, and GANGLE that she will eat them, but then enters into a dialogue with RAGATHA and JAX. And in the ensuing communication, JAX finds a way to convince the Fudge to deliver 2 trucks to the Candy Kingdom. 2 more such NPCs are the crocodiles Max and Chad, playing the role of bandits who robbed the maple syrup in the Candy Kingdom. At first, they drive a truck in a given direction. Then they see a chase after them and drive away from the chase. And when they are caught and tied up, they get into a talk with RAGATHA, who wants to know the details of POMNI's disappearance from them. Max and Chad tell RAGATHA everything they saw, and of course, they participate in setting the atmosphere for the events of this adventure, and even evoke a sense of pity and compassion to some extent. They wanted to help Gummy Goo's mom and bring her maple syrup to the village, and now they've been caught and tied up. But with the arrival of a second syrup truck like this, a happy ending can be made. And release the crocodiles Max and Chad with syrup to mom in the village, and fulfill the final condition of Kane's adventure. And I think that to such NPCs can be called Bubble. Bubble is constantly by Kane's side. His words are always adding and explaining something. It is such an assistant, giving additional hints. And while Bubble has not interacted with the characters of the digital circus, in any way, he is most likely an NPC with a secondary role. And yeah, you've probably already managed to argue to me that there were not 2, but 3 crocodiles in the second series, and I completely forgot about one of them. No, I didn't forget about Gummy Goo. The thing is, he's a very different role from Max and Chad. And he's not really in that category of NPC. Why not? Because there is another higher category of NPCs. These are NPCs that completely or almost completely mimic the actions of the players. Perhaps the initial purpose of their creation is to confuse the players so that the players take these NPCs for real players. These NPCs can move freely. They may not have their own location, they actively and unrestrictedly interact with players. The behavior of these NPCs can change, depending on how players interact with them. In the digital circus, Gummy Goo, and of course Kane are just such NPCs. They play their roles so well that some audience members are seriously debating whether they are NPCs or circus characters that are controlled by humans. What is the specialty of these NPCs? Or maybe they are not NPCs at all, but really circus characters that are controlled by people? Maybe they are so skillfully disguised that they are mistaken for NPCs. And what do you think about it? Write in the comments. And we'll talk about it in my next videos. Watch my channel. As always, it will be interesting and mind-blowing. Don't forget to click on subscribe to channel and put a like. And wait for a new review on my channel. It will be even more interesting. Take care of yourself. And remember, you are not an NPC.